Hey everyone, and welcome to the Rules of Health podcast with Dr. G. I'm your host, Nick Golinvaux, and I write a weekly newsletter on all things musculoskeletal health and longevity. That means fewer aches and pains and a better knowledge of what to actually do when they inevitably rear their ugly head. In this podcast, I will read to you my article of the week so that you can listen to it on the go. If video is more your thing, welcome to those of you watching on my YouTube channel. And as always, the original article with its associated images will be linked in the show notes below. So without further ado, let's get into this week's article titled, Your Primer on Inflammation. The health and wellness space loves a good buzzword. A few years ago, the buzzword was antioxidants. You heard the word everywhere, and products flooded the market touting their antioxidant properties. For the last year or so, I've noticed the same trend happening with inflammation. It seems like there's a surge in products and discussions related to combating inflammation. Anti-inflammatory this, anti-inflammatory that. Let's understand what inflammation actually is. To frame this discussion, I want you to think about inflammation as a natural process. Though it may sound like a bad thing, it has actually evolved over millions of years as a helpful mechanism in our body. Think of it like stress. Stress is good when you are foraging for berries and accidentally wake a sleeping saber-toothed tiger. A surge of cortisol through your body releases glucose for immediate use so you can run like hell in the hopes of seeing another day. Now, the same stress response, doled out in small doses all day, every day, because of your boss's unrealistic expectations about the TPS reports, is a complete and total disaster for the long-term health of your organs. Inflammation is exactly the same. If that saber-toothed tiger gets a swipe at your back, you surely benefit from a process that can quickly stop the bleeding, heal a scab across the wound, and eventually turn that wound back into normal or near normal tissue. That's the purpose of inflammation. But again, if you always have that process switched on, say in your coronary arteries as a reaction to processed food, or in your joints as a reaction to cartilage damage, the end result will be a lot of destruction, pain, and disease. The science of inflammation. A few words about the nuts and bolts. While there are many components of inflammation, one core system to understand is the clotting cascade. It is immensely complex, but here's a brief primer. Essentially, this system takes you from the starting point of an injury and uses various building blocks and processes throughout your body to form a clot that ultimately stops the bleeding. From there, the tissue can remodel back to normal. In my world, I most commonly see this in the form of tendonitis or arthritis. Tendonitis is typically an inflammatory process along the tendons, the long white cords attached to muscles and bones. When the muscles activate, they pull through the tendons to move a joint. Arthritis, as many of you may know, can literally be translated to mean joint pain. Typically, this occurs as the soft cartilage end cap between bones breaks down. As this protective layer degrades, the bones rub together and the entire joint space becomes inflamed. When either your tendons or joints become inflamed, your body steps in to try to help. And what system does it know how to use? Inflammation. Because your body has a somewhat limited set of tools, it sets off the inflammatory cascade just like it would if you were slashed by a saber-toothed tiger. So the damage is done. The problem is that these inflammatory processes have their own downsides. When extended over long periods of time, they in and of themselves can do tissue damage. Additionally, they often create a large bulk of scar tissue that can start to rub on adjacent structures and irritate them, or even block their intended function. This sets off yet another inflammatory cascade. We often see this get out of control with conditions like trick finger or de Quervain's tendonitis. All of this extra inflammatory tissue gets trapped inside an anatomic tunnel, usually leading to mechanical clicking, catching, or severe unrelenting pain that just won't get better on its own. And then there's the issue of chronic joint pain. Loss of cartilage leads to inflammation, which leads to pain, which leads to more inflammation, which leads to more pain, which leads to more inflammation, which leads to more pain. So why does it matter? The purpose of today's article is really just to serve as a primer. But as you start to understand this, you can also start to understand the various tools we have to combat inflammation. The first level of this is diet. While the research is still a little sparse, this is why you see so much out there these days about anti-inflammatory diets. The theory is, if you eat better foods, you will create less overall inflammation throughout your body. Must be a good thing, right? The step up from this would be things like getting enough sleep, using ice packs, etc. These are all lifestyle changes that can insert themselves at some point along the inflammatory cascade and dampen down the cycle. Next is the use of anti-inflammatory medications. Various medications like ibuprofen, naproxen, etc., are designed to attack one component of the inflammatory cascade. They will literally go in and chemically block one step from proceeding to the next. In this way, they shut off the inflammatory system. And the last is surgery. If the inflammatory cycle is out of control and nothing else is working, sometimes we can literally cut it out. This is what we do with a trigger finger surgery or a de Quervain's tendonitis surgery. It's not quite that simple in arthritis because the inciting problem is the loss of cartilage that starts the cycle. And to date, we have not yet discovered anything to regrow that cartilage reliably. So I'll leave you with one final thought. This is all a balance. Clearly, inflammation evolved for a reason. And I want you to think about this when you reach for the bottle of ibuprofen. Are you treating a temporary pain that your body's actually healing as it should? Meaning, should you let the inflammatory process play out rather than stopping it with a pill? Or is your inflammatory cycle out of control and really needs some assistance in breaking the cycle? There are no right answers to these questions, but I often think about them when a patient is 1 week out from a smashed fingertip and they are pounding Advil. Could they be slowing their healing process? Maybe. Is it worth it to be able to get through the day? Maybe. Today, we don't have the answer, so the decision is yours. A few takeaways. Inflammation is a natural bodily process that can be beneficial for healing in acute situations, but potentially harmful when chronic or excessive. The inflammatory cascade, while complex, is the body's primary response to various types of damage, including injuries, tendonitis, and arthritis. Managing inflammation involves a balance of strategies, from diet and lifestyle changes to medications and surgery, with the goal of breaking harmful inflammatory cycles without completely suppressing beneficial healing processes. So this is a little scientific or medical insight into the anti-inflammatory buzzwords you've been hearing recently. There will surely be more to come as we continue to uncover the pros and cons of this process and our various interventions to treat the pain associated with it. Thanks for being here today. See you next time.